Shireen Herkenker. Tell me first, I pronounced your name correctly. Pronounce your name correctly. Beverly Fraser, good night. Watching. I got to like Sherod. Listen, since Sherod's on the program tonight, come on, smash them emoji. Tell me where you're watching from. I see he's smiling. Stan Brung, good night, good night, good night, good night, good night to everybody. Credible sources, good night. All right, keep your things, good night. Whose name is Savage? Savage Tish? I Tish. Say your number for me, no. I got TMU. You say you're Savage. I just want to have one conversation with you. It will be therapeutic. I take that back. I'm joking. Yvonne Cummings, good night. Minute Sion, good night. Karen Gittings, good night. All right, so share the link, everybody. I'll be back in 60 seconds and we start the program. All right, welcome back to Conversation with Rickford. This is Rickford here in New York. Keep sharing the link, everybody. Like I said before, if you're watching on YouTube and you have not subscribed to my YouTube page, take some time right now and subscribe. If you're watching from Facebook, IG, or Twitter or X, take some time, like, follow me. Share the link, everybody. Tonight, we're going to continue our political discourse on political leadership in Guyana, but keep sharing the link. We have like 4,000 people watching us right now. Let's get it up to at least 10. Keep sharing the link, everybody. So I have with me Mr. Sherod Duncan. Everybody knows Sherod, right? Sherod is currently the General Secretary of the Alliance for Change. If you guys are hearing me loud and clear, let me know. Text me in the comments, let me know. But I think so. I'm here myself. So Sherod is currently candidate for Alliance for Change party. Alliance for Change is a smaller party that was in the coalition with the PNC and the other small parties in the APNU. They collated with the AFC and they won the government in 2015. They governed from 2015 to 2020 when they lost the 2020 elections, lost quote unquote. And Sherod would say that it was a regime change. Sherod is currently a member of parliament for the APNU AFC coalition. He's formerly the deputy mayor of the capital city of Guyana, Georgetown, and subsequently he was also, if I'm not mistaken, either the chair or a member of the board of directors of the Guyana Chronicle. If I'm incorrect, he's going to correct me. So, and also, sorry, he's host of In the Ring. So he's a boxer. He boxes with words and politicians. So without further ado, here's Sherod Duncan.
Rickford, a very good evening, and thank you so much for having me on your very, very popular program. Thank you so much. I'm privileged to be here, Rickford. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure having a co-host. Sorry, a
And
host,
let me
a
dare
fellow
say,
host.
you all
Talk
share
show.
the live, smash that emoji button, and contribute to Rickford's program as well. These programs don't
Well, I'm
run
sorry,
on
I don't ask
Twitter.
for contribution because
But
if I do that, Barjack, they would start to say, "Hey, he's extorting money. He's caught." So they don't have anything else to talk about.
yeah, yeah, we understand
So
that too well.
I know. So share the look. You look sharp tonight, man. Like you're running for leader.
I just came off the other program as a matter. Every night we wear shirt and tie because and jacket because we respect what we do for the Guyanese people.
Right. Well, I'm a short and tie guy, so what I'm going to do. So, also, I should mention, Sherod, you have a law degree, right?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Sherod
Sometimes I
has a
don't
law degree
remember,
from the
but I
University of
do.
Guyana.
Yeah, I
So,
also read for communication studies too and graduated there. Read a bit of industrial relations and management as well. Sometimes I don't even remember all of that. You're just on to the next fight, Rickford.
right. So, were you chair of the Chronicle board, or you just a board member?
I was a general. I was a board member initially, and then I was the general manager.
General manager, right? That's it. That's a general manager, deputy mayor. And when you were deputy mayor, did you serve out your term, or you resigned?
No, I served out my term. It's a 3-year term. I
Okay, and
served
then you
my
left.
term.
Why did you leave?
I felt I had done enough at City Hall. I felt I had done enough at City Hall. There was another election on. I think this was 2018. And I wanted some other young people to come in and be able to make their mark, make their impact on the system. I think I had done sufficient by that time, had a lot of policies that were passed, and we were coming to come, as we say. And I really, really wanted some other young people to come in, pick up the baton, and to move the process forward. I never believe in leader for life and one leader for 10 or 15 years. You come, you try to leave the
You're not
place
like
you
Barrett Jack there.
and you move on. No, 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 at all. He's trying with this third term and a fourth term and a fifth term, but we're going to stop that, Rickford. We're going to stop that.
Good. What are some of the policies you achieved while as deputy mayor at City Hall?
One of the very things that I'm very, very proud of is pushing through a solid waste management policy. If you know Georgetown, you know we'd fallen on hard times under the PPP, and to have it done in a very, very structured way, that was something I was very keen on, to have a solid waste policy. And one of the things that we sought to do was harmonize national laws with laws in the city, and sometimes they are not always they're not always harmonized. There's some overlap in some instances. The central government give a fine. Does the city hall give a fine? Who does that? And so part of my own initiative was to champion a solid. One of them was champion a solid waste management policy, and I was able to do that very successfully with members not only of my own party but also of the PNC, and also I think we had some support from PP too. I might be wrong there, but that was one of the things I was very, very, very proud of.
Um, I'm seeing already one of the comments is that implying that you're a quitter. You quit as general manager of Guyana Chronicle. You quit as deputy mayor. Nigel Hughes attracted the same kind of criticism. What's wrong with you guys in the AFC? Why you guys like
I
to
didn't
quit?
quit. I did not quit. I did not quit as deputy mayor. The term was up. The term is 3 years. The term
Okay.
was up. I felt I had done enough. And by 2016 to 2018, there was another local government election in 2018. And I made way for more young people to come into the system. That I did not quit. I did not quit either as general manager. There was some controversy over my tenure there. I was on some administrative leave. The record will show. I was reinstated as general manager. I'd been off the job for a little while, and I felt my presence there could maybe hamper the efficiency of staff and all of that. And being off the job for 8, 9 months, I thought things on the ground had changed. And I always want not to be a distraction. I always wanted, when the coalition was in government, to be in an area where my talents could be brought to bear. And when the board was meeting to when the Prime Minister then had already reinstated me as general manager, the board was ratifying it. I asked the Prime Minister, I told him rather via a letter that I was no longer interested.
I'm not sure what happened to Sherod.
As it were.
Okay, Sherod, can you repeat the last part? I think we missed.
No, I was only saying that by the time I was reinstated as general manager, I was already doing some other things. I'd moved on from there, and I'd asked the Prime Minister not to have the board formally reinstate me, because I wanted to go on and do some other things and not be a distraction at Chronicle and help the coalition government in some other areas.
I'm going to ask you my questions, and I'm going to bring some questions from the audience. During your tenure at City Hall, there was some controversy and conflict between you and the mayor, then Patricia Chase Green. I think at one time she said that you were not a team player. Do you consider yourself a team player? And as leader of the AFC, how would you bring diverging views of the party together to formulate policy? And if you were in a situation where the majority of the executive committee were to come up with a policy that you were against or you voted against, would you happily implement that policy?
Yeah, but that has been happening for the last 2 years that I was that I am the general secretary there of the Alliance for Change. And you ask anybody who I've served with, I have had one of the most uneventful in terms of scandals and all of that. Just putting down my head and getting the work done. I had some disagreements in the way people wanted to implement some policies at City Hall, and I told them we were heading in the wrong direction, and the parking meter was one of them. I was not against the parking meter per se, but the way in which they sought to bring about that parking meter agreement, I thought that wouldn't augur well for our people. And when the government of the day, the APNU AFC government, reviewed that parking meter contract through the Attorney General's office, they're of the same impression too. So I was not alone in my thinking, and it was the government of the day that pulled back the parking meter contract because it had some very, very egregious features in it. So I was not alone in that. So it wasn't the policy in and of itself of having parking meters, but the way in which persons wanted to do that. But I've gone on since then and done several other things, and for the most part, I've gotten into trouble with the PPP. I was detained because
we're gonna come to that. We're gonna come to that.
There was some of that, but I've put down my head in the AFC and I've done the political work, and I'm very, very proud of that.
You mentioned an area there where the central government, responsibility of the central government, and or let me put it this way, where the central government has the authority under the law to interfere with the operation of the municipality. For instance, you just mentioned that the government reviewed the parking meter contract and, for the want of a better word, vetoed it. Do you believe that the central government should interfere in the city council's affairs? And do you think we should amend Chapter 20 of the laws of Guyana to give the municipalities and the local councils in Guyana full autonomy outside of budgetary appropriations through the parliament?
Yes. That is the only way we're going to try to depoliticize the system. I think one of the other things we have to consider, you have that there in New York, Rickford, is an executive mayor. We have a mayor here who's beholden to a town clerk. We have a mayor here who can't even give directions to the city police, And so an executive mayor could cure some of those defects. And there's lots of 2801 where you deal with municipalities right up to 2810, I think, that deals with different aspects of local government and so on, that we could relook at. But definitely in this area where it concerns the NDCs and the RDCs and well, not necessarily the RDCs, the municipalities, that we can relook at some of it. As I said, solid waste is one of those areas where fines overlap. City Hall might say littering is $10,000 fine. Central government might say it's $40,000. So there's lots of harmony where that is concerned. But definitely, part of what the AFC believes is reform, legislative reform, looking at our laws all the time and see if they're in sync with the modern society we are trying to build. And Rickford, I'm very, very happy that I've served both in the public sector, working for our government. I've also very happy that I've served also at the municipal level. And you mentioned it as a councillor. I'm having the privilege to serve as deputy mayor, and doing the work, going out there and meeting with citizens. It's not just about sitting around the horseshoe table, but going out there in the 15 constituencies of Georgetown and making a difference in the lives of the citizens. And I'm very, very proud of
You
having that
mentioned
experience under my belt.
you mentioned that AFC believes in reviewing laws and modernizing laws. One of the criticisms that the coalition, of which the AFC was part, receive and continues to receive is that it did not do much for its constituents. If you were to look at laws that are impeding development or the ability of your constituents to progress, to be part of the economic boom of the country, what are some of the laws that you would probably reform so as to create more opportunities for young people, for women, for African Americans, African Guyanese, to allow young people to get loans? Or what are some of the laws that you would reform that would have a direct impact on those people you're talking about going out there to make a difference in their lives?
Rickford, the AFC, as one of its foundational principles, believes in constitutional reform, and we have to go back to those bedrock principles. One of the things we believe in very strongly, and we've discussed it quite recently at one of our major meetings in our party, is the whole notion of post-election coalitions, and we've said that's one of the things we want to pursue very, very, very strongly. We have to first get into government before we think about changing any laws. The PPP don't cede any territory, have not ceded any territory to us. And we have to be very, very strong and continue to be very, very forceful on this front. But we have to get back into government to do that. And I believe in coalition politics 150% as our only and, the fastest route to getting back into office, to be able to deliver on these political reforms that we so believe in as a party. And look, some of it is not even reforms of legislation, but it's just the political will. And we have a very vindictive government, Rickford, and we've been out here talking about this. It's not that we don't have good laws that are on the books even now, but how do you legislate for inclusivity when a government only talks for inclusivity? We already have that as a feature in our constitution, that we're all one people, one nation, one destiny. The practice of that, Rickford, is very, very different. And so I believe that we have to put together a team, a coalition that gets us back into office in the shortest possible time, that we can bring the much needed changes, that we can bring the much needed relief to our people, because we ain't getting it in this government. And we've seen that very clearly in the last 4 years. What we have seen, what we know that we're getting from the People's Progressive Party is a very corrupt government. And we only have the last report out of the US Treasury Department, where they're telling us how much monies were siphoned off and smuggled gold and all of that. The disservice.
You jump in. What other laws specifically, other than allowing post-election coalitions, what other specific laws you will enact? For instance, how would you enforce, if you were elected leader of the AFC, and let's say the AFC were to be in government, either through a coalition or on its own, for instance, what other laws you will implement, reforms you will implement via constitutional or ordinary legislation, how would you enforce the constitutional requirements, for instance, for inclusivity and to make sure that we have equity and equality, equal rights and justice. How would you amend the laws, if you would, to ensure that those provisions are enforceable? And if a government or a department of the state is not implementing them, what type of consequence they would face?
Well, I would assume we have to have a very strong executive. I'm not just talking about a single political figure in the president, but very, very able ministers who understand their subject ministry and are able to bring to bear the weight of the government, the vision of the government. And look, Rickford, the coalition government had far superior policies than any thing that the PPP can put forward here. Whether we look at the Natural Resources Fund, for instance, had better safeguards than this wishy-washy thing they have put forward here. Our local content policy was far superior than anything we see the PPP have put forward. As a matter of fact, the PPP are now going back to, for instance, the local content policy and saying it's not catering for indigenous people, it's not even catering sufficiently for the business community. So all of those things we have to relook at, simple things that affect people disproportionately in this country. I've been one to champion the psychotropic substances bill through the National Assembly. You know, one of the things, the science has gone ahead of us on the use of cannabis, on the use of ganja, as we know it. Lots of our young men are being locked away for years for a little spliff, for a couple seeds, something like that. CARICOM has done a whole study on this, Rickford. The science has overtaken us on some of these issues. But again, because we were in the kind of multi-viewic society that we're in, we have to do lots of consultation. So I have a thinking, here is a law that disproportionately discriminates against, whether it's our Rastafarian brothers and sisters, whether it's a lot of people in government use ganja too. Rickford,
would you recommend that it be completely decriminalized and everyone with a record expunged?
Yes, because lots of CARICOM countries have already gone in this direction, Rickford, and lots of CARICOM countries are now using the production and exportation of ganja as an income revenue earner for their country. But again, there are lots of safeguards we'd have to look at, and I don't even think we'd have enough time this evening.
But some people might
on this.
Some people might argue that you guys were in government for 5 years. Why didn't you do that? You had the majority in the parliament. I mean, the AFC was in government. They controlled the parliament by 1 seat. Why didn't they, even though there's a heavy petition from the Rastafarian community to legalize marijuana, decriminalize it rather, and expunge the records of thousands of young people? Why didn't the AFC and the APNU do that? Or at least the AFC petition the coalition government to do that? Why wait till now when they're out of power to ask the PPP or just promise again in a new election? Some may argue that. I'm not arguing. I'm just being the devil's advocate.
Understood. Rickford, look, I can only give an account for my tenure and for my service. Those persons who served in the higher echelons of the last administration have to give an account for why this wasn't such a front-burner issue. What I can say is what I have done, and since becoming a member of parliament, this is one of the bills that I have championed, that we have to relook at this whole issue here. As I've said, I'm very strong that the science have overtaken us on some of these issues that were so tabooed in the past, and we have to relook at them collectively, and there's a way in which we can do that. And I want to give an account for my tenure and don't necessarily be carrying the baggage from persons who would have served.
You say baggage. So let me ask you a question that you had direct control of. You just mentioned, and this goes to the ability to formulate legislation and have it passed, right? You were deputy mayor, your party was in government, at least part of a coalition government. Did you at any time petition the party to ask the coalition government to review Chapter 2801 to give the municipality that you were deputy mayor of more autonomy so that you could actually do the work. Because I see the interventions that Chapter 2801 allows the central government to have with the municipalities and localities actually obstruct their operation, right?
Mhm. Because remember, Rickford, these were laws that were in place when Georgetown was between Vincentian Road and the Demerara River. We were a much bigger piece of real estate now, 260,000 residents in Georgetown alone. In Region 4, it could be even more. But definitely, Rickford, it's one of the things, I wouldn't use a strong word as uh, petition, but definitely these were conversations that we were having, because as we were in the in the um in the city hall around the horseshoe table, I remember bringing up the whole issue of an executive mayor. It was something that former Mayor Chase Green was very not very much in favor of. But I thought, having reviewed systems in other places, that an executive mayor could cure some of the ills. We always have a fight between the town clerk and the mayor and the executives who are the councillors there in City Hall. And I think that need not be. And an executive mayor can cure that problem. The mayor doesn't even control the purse strings at City Hall. Got to depend on the town clerk for a roll of toilet paper. That kind of system has to change. I mean, it is as simple as that. If the town clerk don't like the mayor or the deputy mayor, they withhold your gas slip and you can't travel. This is how we could impede upon a whole system if you have people who are uh, wicked political people. And I do believe, Rickford, we have some of that. But I'm very thankful for my service there at City Hall and in the public sector. It's given me a deep appreciation for the struggles people, our comrades, our brothers and sisters in arms, that they face in this system and under this regime. And it's one of the things that we have been tracking. And one of the people who have brought a lot of hardship to bear on municipalities is Nigel Darmlal. And I'm happy that nobody's crying for him, because he did a lot of wickedness in this same local government system. This system can work very well if people take politics out of it. But in always trying to score cheap points at all levels, at local government, municipality, the NDCs, and even at the RDC level, this is where we get into problems. You have at the regional level, and Darren Adams can bear this out. Regional 4, Mr. Siram can bear this out. Kenneth there in Region 7. You have a REO, and then you have a chairman, and the REO could spite you because they're controlling the budget. They could hinder your program. At the end of the day,
But,
you are
but this, you
elected,
see,
they are
this is
appointed, and they could
I
stifle the
agree
work.
with you because I was work part. I worked in the system before I left Ghana as a teenager. I did work study in the regional Ministry of Regional Development under Armia Johnson and Jeffrey Thomas, who were the ministers, and my grandfather, who was the chairman of NCLEO. And when they were reforming, in I think it's in 1990 or 1991, they um, implemented significant reform of the local government system. Amended Chapter 21. That's how they brought in the NDCs and so on. And people were urging them to give the responsibility of administration to the regional chairman, the appointment of the REO to the Regional Democratic Council. The PNC government did not do that. The AFC government plus PNC and APNU did not do that. So it seems to me that both of the political parties want to maintain central government control of the regions rather than give the regions some autonomy. If you're elected leader of the AFC, would you advocate, and if in government, demand that that government pass amendments to Chapter 2801 to give the power of appointment of the clerk and the other administrators of the regions and municipalities and localities the autonomy to hire and fire their staff?
Yeah. This should be the council. This should be the elected
Council,
councillors.
yes, the
What are
council.
you electing councillors for if they cannot, bring a program to City Hall, bring a plan to City Hall, and implement that plan? They don't control the budget. The town clerk is controlling that. They don't control the team at City Hall. The local government commission that has not been reconstituted in months since the life of that commission came to an end. And so we have to rethink all of these things very, very broadly. The mayor doesn't have a team they bring in, besides the councillors that come with them. But the mayor should be able to bring in a team of persons. The way it is done at your end, Rickford, a PR person, a finance person, you're bringing your team to implement the program that you ran on and you were elected on, and that you have a
But you're not
mandate
allowed to do
to
it
give it
because
to the
the
people.
central government wants to control the municipality. And I think that's where reform should start, where the government, central government, doesn't control the municipality, but out of the revenues, as well as out of the revenues they collect in Georgetown, and most of the revenues collected in Georgetown, we should pass a law, shouldn't we? Or would you agree that we should pass a law that says X percentage of the revenue the central government collects from the regions go back to those regions to run the regions, rather than the government giving them what they think they should have in the budgetary process in Parliament?
Rickford, I don't want to exhaust our time talking about City Hall.
I know.
But I agree with you, not necessarily passing a law that says 10% could be done, but we've explored ways in which City Hall could be making more revenue. For instance, the containers that come through this city goes to other places. I think we tried in the past. We have to relook at that. A small tax on containers. Some of the companies that come into the city, that use the city, we have a proliferation of plastics in the city, an environmental tax for some of those companies. Who cleans that up? Who pays for it? And then the government must pay its bills too. The government owes City Hall a lot of money. The lampposts that are there on the parapets from GPL don't pay anything. The pipes that are laid underneath those parapets from GWI, they don't pay anything. But those parapets, those roads belongs to the city, lots of them. And so the GPL gets the free use of the parapets. GWI gets the free use. If we collected those monies alone, we don't have to put any additional tax burdens on our people. But then we can go on to talk to how, for instance, rates and tax have not been revised in any meaningful way in decades in this city.
And that's why, hence the reason I'm spending so much time on this, because I know this is part of your expertise. But
yeah,
one of the biggest problems we have in Guyana is this: wherever the PP is in government, they do not give resources to the regions where your party or the other parties control. And so you're stymied in your governance of those regions. And so that's why I'm because I got a lot of questions on that. And obviously it's because of your expertise as deputy mayor.
And when they do give resources, they want to tell you how to spend it, because we've seen in the past when they give it $2 million or $3 million, they say, oh, you must spend that on road lights. And not only must spend it on road lights, this is the company you must buy it from, designer something or something like that. It's a wickedness in them for control. I think we call that control freakism on this side of the
dictatorship. Let's start to party politics. Let me play a video of the former leader of the AFC talking about the performance of the AFC and the strength of the AFC, and then we'll continue conversation on the back end of the video.
No problem.
AFC, Raphael Trotman, on Thursday reaffirmed to media operatives that the AFC is still a vibrant party.
I was ecstatic. Some pundits and commentators had suggested that the AFC was dying or had been put in the comatose stage and was irrelevant and had been gobbled up by the coalition partner. What we saw was a party that was strong, and the AFC, since its inception, has been holding its conferences outside. We move around. We've been to Berbice, Essequibo, Linden, now Region 3, and the fact that delegates are prepared to move to the different regions in support is proof that there is a vibrancy.
The AFC leader posited that his aim is to build on the work of his predecessor, Comrade Ramjatan.
All right, so Raphael was talking about the vibrancy of the party. You have been an executive of the party for a long time.
Yeah.
The reporter was asking a question because they felt that the AFC, as Raphael himself said, that people thought that the AFC was in a comatose state. Can you say that you have contributed as a leader in the AFC to the growth of the AFC. And what do you think is the share of the electorate the AFC has now in comparison to what it has before when it was part of the coalition, or even when it was part of the opposition in 2011, when the AFC, in combination with the PNC, controlled the majority of the parliament?
Yeah. Thanks, Rickford. I believe that the AFC is just as strong as Mr. Trotman is pointing out there. And I know that because I'm on the ground working for this party each and every day. And I was happy to hear Mr. Trotman talk about, the party being itinerant in the sense of the what we call our national executive meeting being held in different places. In January of this year, I took the National Executive Committee meeting to Linden, and I often talk about this light set on a hill, a lamp set on a hill that cannot be hidden. And I kind of tweaked it a little bit. Not only do we have our National Executive Conference we had our National Executive Conference in Linden, we had a walkabout. We fanned out to Block 40 and some Block 42 and some other places. In Linden, we had our National Executive Conference. Well, the fan out is a door-to-door. You talk to people in the community there. You listen to their concerns. We had our National Executive meeting there. And then we also had a whistle stop that very day. And we've been back to Linden doing other things. Linden, the Alliance for Change, Linden has a Women for Change group there that I'm very, very proud of all the work that they're doing. A very, very strong Women for Change group, a very strong Youth for Change group that is coming up. And so when I listened to Mr. Trotman there, not much has changed. So we had that meeting in Linden in January. In May, I took the National Executive Committee meeting as the General Secretary to Rose Hall because we don't run from no fight. I really want to carry the meeting in Bath, but the folks say we had a better facility at Rose Hall, and we replicated the same things there, reaching out to the community, talking with members of the community, getting a sense what is happening there. We have some fantastic people working the quarantine. Orilal, Sebastian Orilal, Derek Bastio. We have my brother from another party working there as well, doing extraordinary work there on the quarantine. And so we have had this party in several regions over the last year, over the last 2 years. We have had some major outreaches as well. This is the work I am committed to doing, building the Alliance for Change beyond a 10% party. I believe we could command more of the electorate if we do a couple things differently. And we have gone out there and talked to people, not just town people, gone out there in Region 10. Kokwani knows us. We've been to places like Hururu in Region 10 and Lothersville, Araim in Region 10, talking to people, listening to their concerns and advancing our own arguments as well. These people are trying to eke out a living in this a high cost of living country. We've been to places like Imbatira and Yarakit and Barabino, Mabaruma, Rickford.
Two follow-up questions on that. I'm trying to get I have a lot of questions I'm trying to get in. So, in 2011, the AFC had a sizable number of MPs, and that was because of a proportion of the vote, because of the proportionality of the vote you all received at the general elections. But in the I think it was 2017 when they had elections, local government elections. You performed 2018. You got less votes than you got in 2011, and some people criticize the party for contesting that local government elections outside of the coalition. What was responsible for that poor performance, and why did the party make that decision to actually contest the elections opposing to their own, in opposition to their own coalition partner?
Rickford, number one, I don't think that we got less than 10 The data that I've seen suggests differently. But I want to say again, Rickford, I don't want to be drawn into giving an account for things that I had no power over, situations and decisions and all of that. Those people who were in the leadership of the Alliance for Change must give account for their tenure. I've been general secretary for the last 2 years. I've been a national exec, but I wasn't general secretary. I wasn't leader of the party.
Okay,
And I'd
fair enough.
love to give
Let me,
an
so let me
account
ask you this.
for things
What's
under my
your
tenure.
vision for the AFC? What would you do differently to the current leadership of the AFC? And what is your vision for the country? If you were to be swept into government, either by coalition or on its own, or as part of a unity government, in whatever formation, what is your vision for Guyana? And what would you do differently than the current leadership if you're elected leader of the AFC?
Rickford, I am not running for president of Guyana. I want to make that clear. That's not part of my interest at this point in my life, nor being prime minister. But I want to build an AFC. You talked about the vision that I might have for Guyana. My vision is rooted in the vision of the Alliance for Change. We believe in a private sector driven economy. We believe in more jobs for our people. We believe in better pay. We believe in equality for all. As I said earlier on, political reforms, personal security. You see what's happening out there? Every day, crime is spiraling in this country. Gender equality. I talk every day about violence against our women and girls, and us having the necessary structures and system in place to, if not totally eliminate it, at least mitigate it. We believe in youth. We believe in the future of our young people. And that is why, for instance, I've been working overtime with our Youth for Change. This is the youth arm of the Alliance for Change, doing fundraising activities with them, planning with them, hoping to do a 10-year strategic plan, because I want to move them from just a youth organization to a youth movement in this country. We believe still that the hinterland is our frontier. And that is why I spend so much time there, whether it's at Region 1, whether it's at Mabaruma or Port Kaituma, whether it's in Region 9. This is what we believe as Alliance for Change. And these are the things I would be pursuing. I'd love to pursue in any government. We believe in diaspora, engaging our diaspora. And it's something we have to do more of in places like Canada, in places like the UK. What is passing now for social transformation is something else. But we believe in real social transformation as an Alliance for Change. We believe in upgrading the education system, and the Alliance for Change was one of those first parties that championed free education. And then them boys Steve the idea, and even having stolen the idea, Rickford, they're finding it hard to implement it the way we would do it. You have now all these tiers.
Yeah, hold on. I got a challenge on that one. You said the Alliance for Change was first champion free education.
Correct,
I mean,
Rickford.
Burnham
Correct. And I say
implemented
that
free
without
education. So I
fear
think
of
you misspoke there.
successful contradiction.
Huh?
I say that without fear of successful contradiction, that the Alliance for Change first champion free education.
But the Alliance for Change was not in existence when Burnham had implemented free education. What are you talking about?
You gone in another direction now, Rickford. Well,
You mean since the PPP has been
in
hold on, you mean since the PPP took away free education?
Correct.
Okay, because I know some people are going to challenge you on that. That's why I wanted to clarify.
And finally, Rickford, I'd love to see that part of what I want to see in government and what is core to the Alliance for Change is a concern for the poor and the elderly in this country. And you only have to talk to our pensioners. You only have to talk to those people who are finding it hard to eke out an existence in this country, be it Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, indigenous Guyanese. We have, as an Alliance for Change, a concern for that. And those are some of the things I'd want to see a greater emphasis on, not in this cosmetic way that this government is doing, but in a real and tangible way. We trying to move more people from the lower class in this country, the poor people, into the middle class in this country, a lower middle class, a deeper concern for the elderly in this country. People serve this country with distinction, and you got to struggle to get a little pension.
What are some of the things that you would do to improve the welfare of the elderly? Like specifically, what are some of the things you will do?
Yep. Now, very, very simple. I think this whole issue of NAS is one that we could tackle. Like COVID was a missed opportunity, this lugging money around to communities. We got to encourage our elderly to have bank accounts. This lining up in front of a post office for 6 hours, waiting for somebody to come and hand you a piece of paper. This is madness. Just recently, I was talking to folks about this thing of working your whole life and then people can't find a contribution for your NIS to be able to get your pension. You're off by 25 and you can't get any pension at all. This whole system that concerns pension needs reform. And I want to bring it as a front burner issue, Rickford. The way in which healthcare, your 401k in the US, is a major political issue, and you better get it right or you're out of government. That is the kind of care and concern we got to bring back to the elderly in this country and the disabled as well. And these are all things that are core to the Alliance for Change, Rickford.
You mentioned earlier youth. What are some of the things and this is a question I've asked everybody, what are some of the specific things you'll do to empower youth and women?
I think young people got to get programs that they're interested in, and young people got to be empowered to talk to their fellow young people. That's one of the ways we're going to win them to our political cause. I'll tell you what I've been doing with our young people, challenging them that they should have structured programs in the Youth for Change youth group that we have. It's a national group with varying hubs in the different regions. But I want to see more structured programs for our YFC, and by extension, I want to see more structured programs for our young people. I'm concerned by some of the activities we're seeing.
What are some of the structured programs you would recommend?
Rickford?
What are some of the structured programs you talk about that you would recommend? Some
of these could be extramural programs that our young people can find themselves involved in, learning a skill. I mean, this is the digital age, Rickford. We're talking about AI, right? And listen to the conversation we have. We're having all the advances in artificial intelligence, and we're talking about logging money around in big suitcases to communities. So there's a vast expanse of things that we can be using to re-engage our young people, sharpening them for this new economy. And it's not only oil and gas, but that knowledge-based economy. We got to continue sharpening them, providing the enabling environment, and then releasing them to their generation and their time to really be part of that development of this country. Have faith in our young people.
Women. Some of the poorest people in Guyana are Afro-Guyanese women and rural East Indian women, as well as Amerindians. How can you, or what programs you would propose, or your party would propose under your leadership to empower these women to, as you said, move them from poverty to the middle class?
Yeah, we have to find systems. I think you asked a question earlier, and this could have some bearing on that. How do we directly empower different groups, women especially, that carry the burden in any society, in any family, in any political party? How do we empower them? And this is part of what we've been trying to do. I've been trying to do in the last couple of years in the Alliance for Change, talking to our women, having a stronger Women for Change group in the Alliance for Change. And those folks who are going to be listening to me tonight, they know we've had some major arguments on this, because I've watched, our Women for Change, go in a different direction than it should be heading. And I'm very, very strong that we have to be able to empower our women, whether we talk about women as entrepreneurs. We got to empower our women to be able to defend themselves, and there's a whole gamut of things we can do there. I was talking this evening about Anuradha Kantun, a young entrepreneur, vendor at one of the markets, stabbed to death by her reputed husband, a young woman trying to make a living for herself, and then you got some jerk going to take her life so senselessly. So there's a number of ways we got to empower our women economically. We got to empower our women socially. We got to empower our women emotionally as well. And my experience is again, just like our young people, it's creating an enabling environment, giving our women the tools. And you know, the answers to some of these things reside in our women as well. I don't want to suggest that I have all the answers how our women can take care of themselves, but I think we ought to empower them in any society and allow them to flourish, protect them, especially in this society where we have violence against women and girls ranking so high.
Just to follow up on that, so some of the women, I'm sure, would argue that we hear a lot of platitudes about protecting women and girls. They hear a lot of talk about empowering women, but they don't see it. What specifically would you recommend to be implemented in your party, or if your party is a part of a government, to ensure that you achieve the things you just talked about?
Rick Fern, we got to take women seriously. You know, we live in a country where if a woman goes to the police station and says, my husband hit me, well, police ain't getting him man and woman story, you know, and we got to retrain, we got to retool, we got to rethink lots of these issues, right? So we have to have a greater sense of how we protect our women, right? I think there's a system we must have where somebody can say if a woman was beaten, whether it's a slap or it's 10 cuffs, I am pursuing this matter no more, and the case just dropped. And then, you know, 6 months later, she turns up dead, right? We have to have a system where we pursue these perpetrators that mete out violence against our women and our girls, and we have to move in the area of legislation. Look, I understand some issues very well, you know, human rights and all of that, where we concern hanging. But I think we got to make some people an example in this country, right? I understand the issues very clearly, having studied law and all the human rights implications and all of that. But I think what is germane to it is that we have to have a very strong push, and not only at the political level, at the level of the courts, at the level of the judiciary, period, and at the level of the executive, Rick Ford, because one of the problems we had is that some of the very problems that we're articulating here are being perpetrated by ministers in the government. So they have no political will to really and truly empower a system that might rule against them. You saw what happened in the Darmdale case, what Irfan Ali said. Oh, he called the minister and asked him X, Y, and Z, instead of dismissing him on the spot.
Would you implement a code of ethics? Would the AFC in government implement a code of ethics for members of the cabinet and other senior government officials?
Rickford, if memory serves me correctly, we already went in that direction with a code of conduct. I think it got to the level of being gazetted, but whether that was actually ratified into actual law, but it should have the force of law. The PPP don't look at that. The APNU AFC government gazetted a code of conduct for its senior leadership. So that we've already traversed that territory. Whether we codify it further is another story, but that should have the weight of law.
So the government, they were in government. You see, this is the thing. They were in government, and it is not law. So, I mean, were they really serious?
I think so. Because I don't think the folks who took the time to put together that document got it all the way up to being gazetted were not being serious. And I think even if it's not law, you could have a document that all of your ministers sign on to, right? And you are held responsible by. You know, that's one of the things that endeared me to Kamala Bissessar. Look how many ministers she fired, you know? Soon as you slip up, you're gone. And that is the kind of strong leadership we have to bring to bear. But what we see a lot of is a government currently that tries to protect. The worse you do, the higher you can go. Look at May Thomas, for instance. You know, had all those struggles, visa revoked, questioned by the border authorities, she's elected to the central executive of the PPP. Thank God for sanctions.
Let's talk about that and the police force.
Thank God for sanctions.
Recently, we had the sanctions. United States government sanctioned two members of the PPP. One is a councillor, one is a central committee member of the PPP, and a government official. Both of them government officials. There's been no investigation. The government is bluffing the nation by saying, we want the US to tell us what the information is that they base their decision to sanction on, when they can launch an investigation in Guyana and get the exact information. They don't want to do that, but they're bluffing the US because they want to tip off their fellow criminals when the US gives them that information. How would a potential AFC government deal with something like that, where
again,
members of your administration are sanctioned? And how do you feel the PPP government has handled this, and what actually should be done with these people?
yeah, I think that code of conduct, Rickford, is a good place to start so that everybody knows where we're starting on day one. And if you transgress this, there'll be nothing, no party affiliation, no friends, family, and favorites that can save you. So I think one of the things is setting the ground rules very, very early. And listen, Rickford, we have to be a government with a difference. If we want staying power again in the halls of power in this country, we have to be a different government to the PPP. And circling the wagon on some of these issues will not do it. We have to demand a higher caliber of leadership for our leaders, and I think we have that. I think we have that, and having a base to start from. I think that code of conduct is an excellent place. Whether we ratify it, whether we codify it even more, that can be done as well. But at least we have a starting point, and the PPP can look to that. That it wasn't only for the coalition government. That is a national document, a national code of conduct for persons operating at a certain level in the government, not only for ministers. You have permanent secretaries and so on who can be held to account for that as well. And I think that's a good place to start. Rickford, the coalition government was a superior government in many regards, and they don't always get the credit for it, blame it on PR or what have you. But a lot of framework for these things were set. I mentioned too earlier, the local content policy. The PP come in and met something ready-made. The Natural Resource Fund Act bill, it was already there, and lots of other legislation were already passed or in the pipeline, and they were able to come in and benefit from that. I told the National Assembly quite recently, this new road that starts from the Jumbie Board heading parallel up the East Back, that wasn't of recent vintage. That area there was identified for a road since under the PNC administration way back when, prior to 1992. But we never had the money, Rickford, to finance it in a major way. This government came into office, had the National Resource Fund Act ready and waiting for them, and then the windfall started coming in, and they can do all of these projects. But they abuse us every day. We never did anything.
The Ghana Police Force. The Ghana Police Force is seen as an institution that is dishonest, has very dishonorable leaders. They engage in criminal activity. They frame people. They politicize the force. How would you begin to restructure and reform the Ghana Police Force to restore its confidence, the confidence of the nation, and restore the professionalism in the Ghana Police Force?
Rickford, again, we've traversed this territory before. Every Guyanese know that when the coalition government was in, the Ghana Police Force began to undergo a transformation. And I'm privileged to have worked with Kemraj Ramjatan as he was then Minister of Public Security then, and I worked in that ministry helping him. And the government began to reform the Ghana Police Force. Crimes were being solved, Rickford, very, very quickly. Piracy was on the decrease. Every other day you hear fishermen have gone missing, fishermen attacked out there at sea. We can't even get 50 fishing licenses from Suriname, 3 years and counting. The Ghana Police Force was going somewhere. I remember when David Granger, President Granger, was looking for a commissioner of police. The headline was, he looking for somebody incorruptible. I wonder many days who the PPP was looking for when they were looking for a commissioner of police.
Somebody who could pass them up and hide their crimes.
Look how Leslie James served with distinction, without a scandal in the Ghana Police Force. but instituting reform after reform and turning around that Guyana police force. Look, we have the answers to a lot of these problems. You know what it is? Getting rid of the PPP. And that's why I say any government that the coalition can offer up will be a far superior government than anything the PPP can offer up. And I'm happy to be part of that process and ready and willing to put my shoulder to the wheel and move this
A
project forward.
follow up on that. So you had a very senior officer, a superintendent of the Ghana Police Force, who went through the same process like me, questioned, phone confiscated, etc. Is accused by law enforcement of attempting to recruit hitmen, whatever it is. Went back to Guyana, no investigation. On the investigation in the United States, you have a senior Guyana Police Force officer who allegedly spoke to someone about killing somebody. Questioned by FBI and Homeland Security, and went back to the PPP government. And no investigation, not sent on leave, no announcement that, well, we're talking with the US government to figure out what they're, nothing. How can the nation have confidence in a police force when, probably I'm asking the wrong question, when we have these scandals and people seeing their senior police officer engage in crimes and the government not doing anything because they're placed in positions to cover up the same crimes and wrong acts, wrongdoings of the government?
We got to fire the government. That's what we got to do. Name a scandal in the Ghana police force under the coalition government. Name somebody who was stopped and searched by the US authorities. The PPP protecting people who can do their dirty work. Rickford, you think they didn't know why the Americans stopped me? You think none of them didn't ask me what questions were asked? You think Robeson didn't ask her? You think Jack didn't ask her? You think they didn't ask the senior policeman? They knew, Rickford, what was in the pipeline coming, and it was only a matter of time. It might have happened faster than they perceived it was happening. And some of them themselves, who
are part
asked
of the
the question
corruption.
about the answer, are being investigated right now. And we
Yes.
look forward to the glorious day when some of them going to be rendition and wearing an orange jumpsuit, Rickford.
Let me ask you about the judiciary. We saw today where the Judicial Service Commission announced the appointment of judges, where the president controls this process. The president appoints the chairman of the Public Service Commission. He's a member of the Judicial Service Commission. President appoints other members of the Judicial Service Commission. I know by virtue of the Chief Justice and the Chief Justice and the Chancellor, by virtue of their positions, are automatically on the Judicial Service Commission. But we saw a commission that appointed a majority persons of overwhelming majority persons of one ethnicity. Second, you have one person appointed who has a connection, an alleged connection with someone who was in a death squad, an alleged drug dealer. How can we reform the judiciary, number one? And two, what would you do to end the standoff in the judiciary with regard to the appointment of the chancellor and the chief justice? What new legislation, or how would you amend the act to make sure that we don't have this standoff and we have confirmed chief justice and a chancellor of the judiciary?
I don't know how we do that without the executive, because as senior functionaries in the judiciary, who's above the chief justice and chancellor to appoint them, but the president? What we need is political will, and that is what I really want to talk about. I know there's a controversy somewhere, a scandal somewhere, where one of the judges may have been or allegedly involved in unsavory activities and that kind of stuff. I don't have enough information on that report to really pronounce on that. What I want to talk about some more is what you mentioned, that we have some very, very bright people in the acting chief justice and in the acting chancellor of the judiciary. And I think they have proven themselves in this judicial system time and time again. And you know what is wicked? Is that if nobody else, the chief justice herself, single-handedly responsible for the PP being where they are, right? But that is how ungrateful they are.
But why must we leave it to political will? Why don't we have legislation? Why don't we reform the law, either via constitutional reform or amending the laws that, well, the Constitution, to ensure that we don't have these two offices in limbo. So should we put a proviso? I asked several persons this question. A proviso in the in the Constitution, that says if the president and the opposition leader doesn't agree on a nominee, anyone serving in that position for more than a certain time automatically is confirmed? Or should we send the appointment to the parliament and mandate that the parliament votes for this by a higher threshold than 51%?
Rickford,
Than a simple majority.
some of these issues are very nuanced. And I hate to reference the US all the time, but maybe a system that you have in confirming justices might be one that we might want to explore here. When the justices have to come before Congress, maybe they should come before Parliament.
But that's what I'm asking, yes.
And the question, I would love to see something like that. And I think, again, this could break some of that kind of deadlock that you're talking about. Maybe the president offers up his nominee and they come before Parliament, and the government has to try to get buy-in from the opposition, from the parliamentary opposition, for their candidate. And I think that could weed out lots of these problems. It is an indictment on us as a country, whether in government or in opposition, that we have not filled these positions in over 18 years. We had the president of the
years
who came himself and say and almost on his knees begging them to appoint these ladies to the substantial posts. When the PPP says soon and shortly, my God, don't hold
nothing is happening.
But it's an indictment. Even to get the judges that we have now. I have heard the Chancellor, I've heard the Chief Justice, lament on how their workload is so much, and begging this government to bringing more justices. Anil Nandalal goes out and he's going to castigate the judiciary for not having their written judgments in time and all of that. But the Chief Justice and the Chancellor saying, we need help. We need help. We are overloaded here. And just in the last week or two, we heard the Chief Justice on this very, very issue about how many cases she has to deal with. And a point she made too, even with this new cadre of judges coming in, they're going to be very, very taxed on day one as well. So it's a whole system of things that we have to look at. But I love the system that the US has. I think it's that bipartisan approach to appointing judges and having to come through that process. It's a it could be very useful here.
You and I talk all the time about discrimination. There's no question that there's discrimination against Afro-Guyanese and Indo and Amerindian Guyanese who are not supporters of the government. The government doesn't care. You've had international condemnation. You've had exposure at the UN. You had the United States Human Rights Commission on the UN Commission criticizing the government. Nothing has changed, except they've now thrown 1 or 2 contracts at some Black people, and they're menial, right? They're just little contracts to clean trenches and drains. On an AFC, under your leadership, how would you ensure enforcement of equality in Guyana throughout the government system, throughout the private sector, to make sure that we don't have a repeat of what we saw in the last 23 years of the PPP, which is racial discrimination against African Guyanese? And now, where we saw Niger used it and CGID did studies that showed over 80% of government contracts going to East Indians, and the government being unapologetic about it. Now they're kind of giving 1 and 2 African Guyanese contracts, but their ethnicity control procurement in Guyana. How can we level that playing field? Do we need legislation?
First and foremost, I'd love to say that as against discrimination against any ethnicity, that I personally and the Alliance for Change believes in diversity, something that we treasure. And I think we have to continue to make a conscious effort in this direction. That's why I'm very, very proud to stand with my colleagues, Jorita Fadans and Ricky Ramsarup, in this journey in building a very, very progressive AFC, especially in a country with deep racial tensions. I'm very, very proud of that my party can be a beacon of diversity. Very, very proud of that. Like I've said in many instances this evening, Rickford, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We spoke about the code of conduct earlier. We have actual legislation on the books that says that 20% of contracts must go to small contractors, and it goes in depth who is a small contractor, size of company, and all of that, right? But we see, even with legislation on the books, the PPP would want to ignore that and still give contracts to friends, family, and favorites. What I'd like to tell the public out there is that we were part of a coalition government that honored that. This is a different kind of administration we have. And that is why it is incumbent upon all of us that we get back into the government in the shortest possible time, as I continue to say, and forgive me if I sound like a stock record, bringing relief to our people, small contractors, medium contractors too. I was called into meetings, Rickford. I've never said it before, and I'll say it now. I have been called into meetings with businesses that ask me to lobby publicly on their behalf, right? Businesses that say, for instance, impressions, getting all the contracts of this kind, billions of dollars. These are people who don't look like me. Say, we need your help. We need your help. We know you have a loud voice out there, and they listen to you, and have asked me to make interventions publicly on these matters. So a lot of people are hurting in this country, even people you might think support the PPP, because the PPP has always been about a small cabal, a 1% that control everything. And I'm happy to do that. You know, I don't charge a lobbying fee because right is right
But
and wrong is
do you
wrong.
think the laws that we have, the extant laws, are adequate? Do we need more laws to prevent? For instance, you can have small contractors, all of the same ethnicity, and they're the ones getting the contract. So do we need laws that legislate what equity is, equality is?
Rickford, I think that piece of legislation, forgive me if the title of it slips me, speaks to all of that. It is not that we are one for laws. As I said, the coalition government did a lot of work in this regard. But if you have a government that will place can't regard for that, and Rickford, take the Chapui contract, for instance. We have a whole regime of things, Rickford, that a company must satisfy in order to be deemed worthy of a contract. If it was an exam and it was 20 questions, Chapui failed all. They still got the contract for the Bellevue pump station. And I saw recently they were given another contract. So laws on the book, rules and regulation don't mean nothing to a government like this who are not prepared to abide by those rules, by those regulations, and by those laws. And that's why we have to get rid of them. I'm not saying we have all the laws that cater for all the circumstances, but I'm saying in this particular instance where we're talking about small contractors and so on, we have legislation on the book, but they're being ignored. And that's why we got to continue to challenge this government in that regard.
Last two questions. As AFC leader, would you be interested in another coalition? And what is your view on not coalition politics but shared governance, where everybody in the society participates in the government?
Mm-hmm. Let me start with shared governance first. I think when the PPP are returned to opposition, we will give them a greater say than we have had, for instance, in the National Assembly. Right? There's a principle, as we talk about rules, laws, and conventions, that the parliamentary opposition has the deputy speakership. They have not abided by that. So they don't like convention, they don't like laws, they don't like
the
rules, they don't like
largest parliamentary opposition. The largest parliamentary opposition.
The largest parliamentary opposition. But they don't want to recognize that. Right? So we would treat them better because we believe that an opposition should have a voice in a country. Resources should be made available to them. These are the modern times we're talking about, Rickford. And we believe that they would make a good opposition. That is what we believe. Coalition government, as I said, Rickford, I believe in coalition government. 150%. All of us, varying ethnicities and background, talents and giftings and skills and educational level, bearing down on some of these problems that we have. We are the answers that we've been looking for. And I said it repeatedly this evening, that I believe the coalition government was far superior than anything that this government can offer. We were already out there thinking about a new harbor bridge. We were already out there bringing down the instances of what they call it load shedding now, to make it sound nice, blackouts in this country. We raised public servants' salaries many times over. Teachers got a strike for many months, to be able to even come to the bargaining table, even when a court says collective bargaining didn't happen. So we have a party who has been consistently, as we say, breaking down each and every guardrail. They got to go in opposition, Rickford. They have to go into opposition.
Last question. For the AFC members watching now, can you tell them why they should vote for you as leader?
Yeah. Rickford, I know this party. I've spent my time here not idling, but learning this party. Like the building we occupy on the railway embankment, like a house you have, the cracks, the crevices, where it leaks. That's how I know the Alliance for Change. The Alliance for Change also, Rickford, it's not that building alone. The Alliance for Change is the people that commit to this party and say, I'm a supporter, I'm a member, I'm a friend. And that is why, outside of that physical office, I have took the Alliance for Change to many places in this country. I told you about Kokwani, Horuru, Lauderdale, Araima, Imbatiro, Yarakita, Barabina, Pittsburgh in another area in Region 1 there, Citrus Grove, 4 miles in Port Kaituma there. Gone and talked to the people in this great party of ours. I've had a roving office over the last few years, speaking to people in this country, reassuring them, Rickford, that though we are in this long, dark night of the PPP, our best days are still ahead of us. As I said before, I want to continue to expand the Alliance for Change beyond the 10% party. And we're already doing some of this work on the ground, Rickford, and we're making a lot of inroads. I want to build our young people, our Youth for Change, as I said, into a movement that speaks to its generation and young people in general in this country, give them an enabling environment and releasing them to be answers to the many questions of their generation. I want to revitalize our Women for Change group, our Women for Change organization in the Alliance for Change, because our women are important to us and we must empower them to do the work that only our women are capable of doing. I want to fundraise in a greater way. My experience has been we only fundraise when we have trouble on the horizon. There's a hill foot, there's a success, there's a cane view, mucker. But we must fundraise to be able to meet the needs of our membership, meet the needs of our population, wherever they arise and whenever they arise. I want to fundraise on almost an all year round basis to mobilize resources that will continue to empower our people. And we have a very beautiful action plan in the Alliance for Change that speaks to who we are as a party. I believe it with the core of my being. I've articulated some of it this evening. We have to go and we have to refashion some of that to make it more modern and to make it more relevant. Still relevant as it ever was. A private sector driven economy. I believe in that. We got to create jobs for our people, better pay. We spoke about equality, equal opportunity, political reforms, personal security, gender equality. These are issues we have to pursue in greater measure, in the days, in the months, in the years ahead as we rebuild the AFC and we focus on the hinterland. I was talking to some folks in Letem a couple months ago, and they are excited not only that we have a plan that that encompasses the hinterland, that hinterland plan must be driven by our indigenous brothers and sisters. And I'm very, very strong on that. And as I said, we have to begin to engage our diaspora in an even greater measure. The Caribbean, the UK, Canada, we're making some strides north where you are, Rickford, but we have to continue to do that. We believe in social transformation. I believe in this in every fiber of my being. I believe in education, Rickford. I'm a product of that. I said this evening, having been to the university at varying levels, ultimately reading law, currently reading for a master's and getting ready to do another one. I believe in education. I believe it's a way out of poverty. And that is why I'm so strong that we have to cater some more for the poor, creating better programs that bring more people out of poverty into the lower middle class, into the middle class. We have to focus on the elderly. We have to focus on the disabled. And this is what we have been doing, Rickford. Finally, allow me to say this. I said before, and you brought it out this evening, I've served in the public sector. I've served in the municipality in this country, and it has given me a great appreciation for the struggles people in this country face. I think if you are a leader in this country and you don't come out of the public sector, you don't have an appreciation for the public sector, you know, you mightn't be in sync with the daily miseries of our people. Our late great poet Martin Carter says, those miseries you cultivate are yours as well as mine. And that's how I feel about the people in the public service that can't get a fair shake in this country. You know, I want to see a greater push with the opposition, with the Alliance for Change also in our parliamentary agenda. We have been meeting as Alliance for Change members of parliament and fashioning a way forward in this regard. And we have to do that in the future in even greater measure. And finally, Rickford, allow me to say this, that, again, I know the challenges that Guyanese face. I know the challenges that people in the Alliance for Change face, our brothers and sisters in the Alliance for Change in the varying parts of this country. Because like a house, you understand where the faults are. You understand where the cracks are. And I want to convert this dream of a fighting force, a tip of the spear of a party. I want to continue to convert the dreams of our membership into results. And that is what myself and my team, we've had a great executive outside of this election process. We must continue to work to not only better the lives of our membership, but better the lives of Guyanese. And it is important, very important. Finally, Rickford, it is very important that any person wanting higher office in this party or in this government understand the struggle of ordinary Guyanese. It's my very, very firm belief. And Rickford, I want to thank you for allowing me this time on your broadcast this evening.
Sure, it was a pleasure. We had a good policy discussion. We had a good political discussion. And I wish you well in the elections coming up this weekend. And all the other candidates, I wish you all well. I know that the PNC as well has their Congress coming up, and I wish all the candidates well. And we hope that the opposition would charge towards the new election and take their parties to victory. Good night, everybody. See you again next Thursday night for another edition of Conversation with Rickford Burke. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.